So congratulations to the great class of 2016. And congratulations too to family members and friends who have sustained you, who have helped you succeed, and who deserve much credit for what you've achieved. The successful completion of the degree requirements for a Bachelor of Arts. In standing with you here today, I offer my first comments to a graduating class at Northwestern. Many of you graduating probably don't know me. In case you don't know, I'm Adrian Randolph. I'm the Dean of Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences, and it's a great pleasure to meet you in this public forum, but in the course of the year, I've only met some of you, and it's been a great pleasure. So I've only been a year on the job, and while I wish I could have got to know every single one of you, part of me also hopes that you had much better things to do than meeting deans. Nonetheless, at this moment, we share something in common. This is the first, for you, I take it, graduates, unless some of you have graduated from university before, which we'll have to talk about if that's the case. But it's also, for me, the first. And doing this together is a great honor for me, and it's something I'll treasure for the rest of my life. Let me first of all say that you look fabulous in your caps and gowns. The tradition of wearing such gaudy dress goes back to the Middle Ages in Europe, a period I happened to study. Then it had much to do with staying warm. I hope they're serving that function today for you. The garb, however, is much more than just practical regalia. It signals to us something very special is happening. Graduation is a rite of passage. Just like those rites of passage we study in anthropology classes. The special robes, the mortarboards, and the colors all put us in a liminal space between zones. The end of an academic year and the beginning of another cycle for faculty, and for you, graduates, the end of your undergraduate studies and a new beginning. A hinge in time articulated by special clothes. Dressed the way you are, you become the focus of attention. And it was this, above all, that made me hate the regalia at my graduation. I could not wait to get them off. Why? I thought the trappings of elitism were foolish. And as soon as I could, I swept them off and returned them, joining my mother, my brother, aunt, friends, and their families, thinking now we could begin the celebrations in earnest. But to my horror and consternation, my mother was incensed, incandescently angry with me and inconsolable. Why? She had wanted a photograph with me in cap and gown. My mother is not an irrational human being, nor is she intemperate, but she really wanted that photograph. For her, growing up in London, daughter of a Belgian refugee and a boxer, attending university was a dream that was left to be unfulfilled. This was partly economic, partly the stratified educational system in the UK, and partly to do with her being a woman. She emigrated to the United States, in fact, with the goal of pursuing a university degree, but work, both public and the private work of childcare, diverted her from this goal. But it left her with a burning desire for her children to receive an education that was second to none. While my brother and I may not have always lived up to the great expectations of the institutions we attended, there was no doubt that my mother achieved her goal in offering us both opportunities that were beyond our wildest dreams. This has shaped my feelings about higher education in many ways. It certainly has made me understand that degrees are not something simply earned by individuals and hard work, but by families, institutions, and others. And for those, the institutions, the family, and the support I received, I am absolutely grateful still to this day, and I hope you are all too. At the time of my graduation, however, I simply did not see this all clearly. My mother had sacrificed much, and at the moment one of her fondest dreams was to be realized, I did not give her enough time. Nor did I give her the opportunity to produce a visual memory, a photograph that might symbolize our collective journey and success after many years walking towards, or striving towards this common goal. I was foolish. So my first piece of advice, very important in life, is don't take off your cap and gown too quickly. By all means, feel pride and a sense of accomplishment being the center of attention in your beautiful gowns, but also realize that your clothing represents something to others. Do not miss this opportunity to acknowledge all those who have helped you achieve what you have. Your achievement is collective. Some grammarians would have us say that one is graduated from a university. One does not graduate oneself. The verb graduate is not only intransitive, but also passive. And I'm not sure I would be so pedantic as to say we should all use the passive form regularly, but I do like the way that it suggests an individual is not alone in this significant honor. I know that I did not graduate from university, but I was graduated, above all through the good graces of my teachers, family, friends, employers, and above all, my mother. So my second piece of advice is not to forget to thank those around you today, and for those far away. Updating the great 17th century poet John Donne, no human is an island entire of itself. Every human is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. We are all continents teeming with supporters. And I realized today, and when I received my PhD, I proudly and dutifully wore these very robes some 2 decades ago, and I stood in the heat with my mother for as many photographs as she wanted. But I tell you the story of my graduation not to remind you only to be thankful, to wear your robes with pride, and to take pictures, but because my story, I think, has wider implications, ones that touch upon the very heart of the education you have received at Northwestern and at Weinberg College. Over the course of your time at Northwestern, you have all studied a great range of subjects. While today you array yourself behind the banners we just saw, which are clearly a significant part of your experience here, we all march behind the banner of the interdisciplinary arts and sciences. This is your degree, an interdisciplinary degree that does not only offer you skills in a particular field, but seeks to instill in you a lifelong love of many things. Broadly speaking, the natural and social sciences, the arts and humanities. When you reflect on your time at Northwestern academically, I hope that you recall the joys and frustrations of having to study things that were way out of your comfort zone. For this intellectual stretching is at the very core of our educational mode in a college of arts and sciences. For it inculcates in you forms of adaptability that are absolutely essential in one's professional and personal life. Moreover, and this is where it connects to my story, it aims to produce a form of deep empathy. For by viewing the world through many lenses, one ideally learns how to empathize with others, to grasp the world from many perspectives. As many of you know, just look at all the banners around the Evanston campus, the university now speaks of taking a Northwestern direction. This way of expressing ourselves about ourselves takes advantage of our name, the directionality of the words north and west, making sense of them despite our place here, arguably further east than west and only relatively north. Our name is a compass or a lodestone, guiding us towards something palpable. When I think of this phrase, take a Northwestern direction, I suddenly think of the future. Where am I going? How is what I have learned going to chart a course for the future? But it also suggests to me my past. What brought me to this place, and how did my compass guide me to Northwestern? In answering this question, I find myself musing on the powerful and influential women in my life, like my mother, who in some way predisposed me to come to this place at this time. My mother looms large, a humble but opinionated woman with more humor as she has gotten older. She inherited from her mother, the Belgian who arrived in London after the First World War, a certain resilience that I admire, and a practical turn of mind I often strive to channel. I think too of my other mother, my mother's sister, Aunt Betty, Betty Affleck, who spent her life dedicated to teaching the deaf, and doing so with a reverent wit and a certain panache. My father died when I was young, leaving me and my brother with this trio of lively, opinionated, and powerful women. They shaped my perceptions of the world, and I think they led me in some strange way to Northwestern through a certain set of purple-tinged lenses. Turn your mind's eye back a century to the 1st of June, 1916. On that day, Northwestern broke ground on a building called the Women's Building. It was to include a gym, a swimming pool, locker rooms, and a feminine hall of fame, study rooms, social center, and rooms for women's social organizations. As it turned out, the building would only be built in the 1930s and would eventually become Scott Hall, which was originally a student center after it was opened for all students. This ambitious plan to provide women on campus with a particular space, especially but not only for athletics, speaks volumes, I think, about Northwestern's history. That history, as with most institutions, is checkered. There are moments of shame. But there are also moments, great moments to celebrate, like the university's admission of women in 1869. This means that we admitted women earlier than any of the top-ranked universities in the United States, with many Ivy League institutions admitting women only in the 1970s. I've spent most of my life studying at institutions that either did not admit women or only admitted women within my lifetime. I spent most of my early education in high school in a single-sex situation. My undergraduate university, Princeton, only admitted women in 1969. The university where I received my PhD only absorbed its women's college in 1999. And the institution where I spent the last 2 decades, Dartmouth College, only became coeducational in the 1970s. It was, therefore, of particular interest to me when I learned that Northwestern became coeducational in 1869, a full century before Princeton, Harvard, and Dartmouth. This is something I think as Wildcats we should be especially proud. As we all know, yeah, I think that's worth a round of applause. As we all know, history infuses institutions for good and for bad. When it comes to the history of women at Northwestern, I'm sure there have been ups and downs. But in looking at our early acceptance of women as full members of this intellectual community, I feel that there is a clear symbolism and openness to which I can fully subscribe. And this is one thing I'd like you to remember about your school, your university. When people ask you where you went to college, I want every one of you to feel pride, purple pride. Of course, in the education you received here and the pride at being accepted at one of the most selective colleges in the United States. But I also want you to feel pride at attending a university that admitted women in 1869, some 20 years before even coeducational universities like Chicago and Stanford were even founded. Thus, when I think of purple pride, I think of my first graduation ceremony at Northwestern, looking out at you today, the great class of 2016. I'll also think of my own graduation and how I thought too much of myself and too little of those around me. I'll also think especially of my mother. But I'll also think about the fundamental empathy wrought by the interdisciplinary arts and sciences education that we all share. That core of the education being rather in the major alone is to perhaps be found in the interstices, the spaces between our courses and our notional connections, and the notional connections that you will now continue to forge as you develop. And I'll reflect on the institutional commitment to gender equity about which we should be proud, but toward the promise of which we should continue to strive. This is my purple vision, one I hope that remains with you as you are graduated from this great institution. Congratulations.